This is an ancient tool, invented shortly after flint and steel and the point in time where our ancestors quit rubbing two sticks together to create fire.
We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.
Yeah, disconnect the battery before doing electrical stuff, else you can have unexpected results.
Very good idea.
It runs! All right, so our special order Harley-Davidson spec air filter came in to replace our, I'm guessing from the colors, probably From or something or other, similar to that air filter that was on the Jeep. They look basically the same size and piece, so...
They're the same height?
Yeah, they're basically the same height, basically the same diameter.
We had to do this one specifically on dimensions, measurements.
And so it's the same inner, outer, I mean, theoretically, if it's the same size, it should fit. Mm-hmm. Seems like a teeny, tiny air filter for a Jeep, but it is a teeny, tiny Jeep.
That's true. And related to it, I am currently looking up this piece.
Which is probably specific to the carburetor.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too. I was looking on the Kaiser Willys website.
Given that relationship to the vent.
Yep.
And the inside diameter of this has to match that. And then this is the cover, which again needs to be basically that size.
Yep.
Funny because that ends up looking like almost like a marine spark arrestor setup. But
yeah, but didn't you once say that this Dauntless engine was used in a ton of boats?
So the Oddfire Buick V6 had this long story in terms of its relationship with Buick and AMC and Kaiser, but OMC did use the 225 cubic inch Oddfire V6 for boat marine applications as well. So yeah, it is possible that something very similar to this found its way into a boat at one point.
So we're putting on a couple of other parts that were special ordered. Trying to get away from the backlight in here since the door is slightly open. And so we're taking care of that. We're going to special order a carburetor rebuild kit, although we're needing to look inside and make sure we've got the right numbers off of it. So we order the correct kit. So probably not a whole lot of running for the rest of this weekend. I enter dog show season for a short time. So we'll be working on this one maybe during the week, but honestly, we've got a couple other projects that are going to slip in here. So we'll see what we can do.
Insert thought bubble.
Uh-oh, thought bubble.
For the part number for that air filter.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
This is an ancient tool, invented shortly after flint and steel and the point in time where our ancestors quit rubbing two sticks together to create fire. This is used to set the timing, ignition timing, for old school motors. The way this works, it has a sensor that connects to spark plug 1 that tells the tool when the spark plug is firing.
Well, it's not connected to spark plug 1, it's connected to the wire.
Well, it reads...
Okay. The electrical pulses through the wire?
The electrical pulse through the wire.
Oh, I get it.
Okay. It also connects to a power source and has a strobe in the end that fires when the spark plug fires. So the idea is it creates a strobe that is synchronized to the ignition timing. The idea is to read the ignition timing of the firing event of the motor. Now, located way down inside the engine here, and the contrast on it is such that you probably can't see it to speak of, is our timing marks or timing indicators. The idea is there's a mark somewhere on the crankshaft or the crank pulley there that indicates where it is at relative to top dead center. So what happens is the strobe allows you to see where the crank pulley is at the time of the ignition event.
So you're using this to determine whether or not we've got everything set up correctly?
Essentially, I'm checking to see if we are approximately 5 to 10 degrees below top dead center, which is what we expect to be spec timing for this engine. Given the pyrotechnics out of the carburetor.
That was fire!
Which shouldn't happen if the ignition event is happening with an intake valve that is closed. We suspect the timing of this is not where it's supposed to be. So, once again, fuel pump is off. Fuel filter here is empty, so it should not run. It should not start. We want to see where the ignition events are occurring. Basically, hopefully we can see it without the engine starting for us to be able to read this. No longer used with modern fuel-injected vehicles. Long since gone. It's a lost art. You don't get to point a gun at your engine anymore. So, let's see. The real trick to this is pushing this button and being under the hood at the same time to try to read that value. Okay, let's see what happens. That is so funny because it acts like it wants to run as long as the starter's engaged. So I'm not seeing a timing mark down there though. It's just weird.
So he found the mark, which is great, but we want to fill it in with paint markers so that we can see it more easily. So that's where these Sharpie paint markers come in really, really handy.
Get me a towel.
No kidding. You didn't create a paint mark, you created a paint stripe.
It clearly spooged in ways that wasn't supposed to. So our marks in here are labeled 0, 4, 8, 12. So it's basically 0, 2, 4, 8, 10, 12 coming up. So as we get presumably more before TDC, the mark is going to be higher. And as we get lower or after TDC, which is too late, will be lower down here. So the next question is, where is the mark relative to any of those at the point of the ignition event? We need to figure out if we are way early or way late. Or by trying to figure out where that white spot is at relative to the scale at all. I'm not even beginning to see it. Not even close. Amazon showed up with the new ignition switch for us. And the idea is to replace the existing one with the new one. The new one is set up with an accessory position, the off position, the run, and a momentary start. So we're going to take a minute here and update our wiring.
Yeah, because this has been frustrating us trying to set up the engine this way, because if you let off the starter button, the engine dies.
So it acts like we've got the ignition tied to the starter switch.
Or the fuel pump, you were saying?
Well, and the fuel pump is a separate conversation because the fuel pump should be on but isn't on. But clearly the ignition system is hot. At least when the engine is cranking, it's hot, which implies something perhaps is cross-wired with respect to the starter. So anyway, we're going to take a minute, now that we've got the correct part, and see if we can revise the wiring here. So.
And I like that I'm going to get keys for this rig, although obviously there's no doors to lock.
So, a little bit of rewiring. I have now got this into a state where I have keys on the vehicle. Starter button now does nothing. If I turn the ignition on, that starts the fuel pump running. And now I can push the button and the engine turns over. So, improvement in that it's functioning more like I would expect, and it should function. However, now we're back to our timing light conversation.
And you got snap, crackled, and popped.
Yeah, disconnect the battery before doing electrical stuff. Else
Good.
you can have unexpected results.
Very good idea.
1 week later.
Okay, another day in the shop, kind of picking up from where we were at. Still working on some minor updates here to the CJ2A to make it, one, a little bit easier to work with, and two, trying to get it running. So, off camera, where we left off, or on camera where we left off, was had just done some work with the ignition switch and had lost spark. What happened with that was old wiring, wiggling with it, managed to break some connections. What we did then in the interim was to go ahead and run some new wire with new connectors. First and foremost, to the hot side of the coil here, where we now have a new wire with a new connector that runs back to our ballast resistor underneath the dash, and then from the ballast resistor up to the ignition switch. So all new wiring for that. And then new connectors for the wire that runs from the ignition coil down to the solenoid on the starter. The way this works is that when the starter is running, that wire up from the starter is hot and provides some additional power, bypassing the resistor during that starting phase. And that helps compensate for battery voltage drop due to cranking to ensure that you've got enough power to the coil. So that gets us back to the point of now being able to resume the effort around checking the timing on this motor to address the fact that it was backfiring and shooting flames out of the carburetor. That should cover as the recap for the last video segment. So let's see where we're at now in terms of our timing. I want to remove the extra ambient light so that we can see.
But before you do that, I want to show that we have highlighted, let me see if I can get them. We've highlighted the numbers with silver paint just to help them show up a little bit better in the flash.
And that is a range of roughly 5 to 10 degrees below top dead center, 5 degrees being engine spec, and then we're at about 6,000 feet altitude, so a little bit more advanced to help compensate for the altitude. but we should be in that range of what we consider to be correct timing for this motor.
Okay, so I'm going to turn some lights off as well, and we'll get started.
It ran a little bit.
Damn, it ran for a much longer time.
I suspect part of the reason we were having it not run was that bad wiring under the dash that's now been fixed.
Missed it, but there was some smoke coming out of there. I know, hard to see. I only had to step out. He's fuming up the place pretty good, so I opened the entire breezeway. Who knows? This could be burning off 30 plus years of stuff in the exhaust system and inside the engine itself. Kind of reminds me a little bit of what you see on a JL when a JL gets too much angle on some of the obstacles. Am I right?
It runs. I mean, seriously, it runs. Doesn't sound too terrible at this point. It even kind of sort of idled there for a while. We've obviously got a few things to address, like getting the upper radiator hose there to actually seal up. I think that's really more a matter of this clamp isn't quite tight enough, or isn't necessarily where it needs to be at the right place. Just that little bit from my fingers was enough to stop the drip for a couple of minutes anyway. It runs. That's kind of a big thing. It runs.
It's our own private smoke show.
For sure. And that's, again, likely just a lot of crud built up that's going to take some time to blow out. It could also be running quite rich at this point. Could very likely still be a lot of crud in the carburetor, not doing what it should do. But it actually starts, it runs, it didn't sound too bad.
It even idled.
And it even idled a little bit.
But you know what it reminded me of? A JL at too much of an angle on an obstacle.
That's not funny.
Says the JL guy.
Says the guy that lost a big chunk of time on a Sand Hollow trip dealing with a JL. Yeah, that's not funny.
Quarter turn, half turn. Almost a half a turn on that band clamp.
Yeah, just trying to cinch it up on the hose there.
Gas tank apparently makes a pretty good place to put tools.
And
That's his new ignition switch.
in a position that makes it easy to work on.
Yeah, I mean, it will eventually go here, but it's not there today. Hold on. Fire in the hole!
Just a little bit of gas, a little bit of a throttle.
What did he forget? Oh, fuel pump.
Turn it to the on position rather than the accessory position.
There you go.
That's a nice, easy start.
Look, Ma, no hands! Yeah, for some reason we can't get the timing light to work today.
Minor issue, it doesn't turn off with the ignition switch.
Yeah, I'd rather it did, although it sounds like it just died on its own. Can I point out something? The second run? Whole lot less smoke.
Yeah.
But you are getting some black sooty stuff
Rolling out again, but yeah, that's kind of expected.
right there.
Yeah, that's not that uncommon.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just, something new for us for this particular experience.
And that seems to have addressed the
Dang
drip.
Well, you and I both forgot to check the engine temperature gauge again.
Really don't expect it to be anywhere near operating temperature, which is probably going to be 180 to 210
Yeah,
degrees.
but do you really think it's even? Well, the way the engine's steaming, I guess that's just the coolant burning off because it's up there.
Yep. Cool. I would like to know why it doesn't turn off.
Well, that will be the next puzzle. Also, next puzzle is going to be rebuilding the carburetor. Carburetor rebuild kit was reordered. Holy crap. Carburetor rebuild kit was ordered today. So we'll get that carburetor rebuilt. Maybe that'll help a lot. We also should let the barn air out. Go pick up the points that we ordered. That could be impacting this. And we ordered something else too that I can't remember. Oh, distributor cap and rotor. Got a new one of those coming too. So, more parts, but hey.
Which should only help it run better.
I agree.